let me ask you, one of the theories that Mark Meadows asked the acting Attorney General Rosen to investigate was this idea that somehow the Italians were involved, that they're using these spy satellites to switch votes with the voting machines.
I don't know anything about that. You'd have to ask Mark.
So,
I don't know anything.
I mean, what do you? And I there's a woman.
I don't know about that. I mean, you'd have to ask Mark Meadows about that. Mark Meadows, a good man, did a very good job. He was a really great chief. But you'd have to ask Mark about that.
You don't really believe that there was somehow foreign control of the voting machines, do you? I mean, do you really believe?
You have to ask whoever it is that's saying it. I think, frankly, there was so much voter fraud and irregularities. Where it came from, I can't tell you, but I can tell you there was a lot of voter fraud and irregularities.
That was from an interview between ABC's This Week co-anchor Jonathan Karl and Donald Trump, and you hear there Donald Trump throwing Mark Meadows under the bus, and I believe Mark Meadows, as part of his proffer session with special counsel Jack Smith, will say that this was pushed on him by Donald Trump to come up with these absurd and dangerous election lies. And Meadows, we know from his proffer session and what's been reported, said that he was the one who had informed Donald Trump that all of these election big lies were not just problematic, but criminal, and that Donald Trump would get in a lot of trouble by not accepting the results of a free and fair election. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Folks, over the past 24 to 48 hours, it's been a tsunami of big stories after big breaking news stories. Yesterday, we talked about the ABC exclusive breaking. ABC's been crushing it over the past 48 hours. The breaking news story where they got their hands on the video of the proffer sessions by Donald Trump's convicted co-defendants and lawyers, Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell, where they both confirmed that Donald Trump was aware of the election lies, was told that he had lost the 2020 election, and then Jenna Ellis said that one of Donald Trump's top aides, Dan Scavino, said no matter what, they were not going to leave the White House. And now we have more. This from ABC News co-anchor of This Week, Jonathan Karl. You heard that interview right there, which is going to cut directly against what Mark Meadows will testify to in the March 2024 trial, being prosecuted by special counsel Jack Smith for Trump's attempt to overthrow the results of the 2020 election. And then we also have this from, and by the way, this is in connection with Jonathan Karl's new book, and the book is called Tired of Winning: Donald Trump and the End of the Grand Old Party. And one of the portions of this book, or one of the chapters, Jonathan Karl talks about how Donald Trump threatened to leave the Republican Party and straight on said he was going to leave and start his own party. And then Rona McDaniel eventually backed down. You had Kevin McCarthy show up at Mar-a-Lago, and because they were so fearful of him starting his own party, they let him further capture the party versus standing up to him like they should have done. Listen to Jonathan Karl talk about this on MSNBC. Play the clip.
I've said if you wanted to do an experiment in this country, if you're political scientists and you have this crazy idea, let's see what happens if one of the two parties goes away. You'd do this. Yeah. I mean, this is what happens when one of the two parties stops adhering to democratic norms. And I want to read some of that and talk about what that means, because that too takes us into the depths of darkness, right?
I mean, it does, and I think we'll look at two of the critical decisions by party leaders after he left office, where there was a path they could have taken, right? And they chose the path to placate him. I don't know.
Again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they thought he was going to come back. I mean, there were two. Obviously, there's the Kevin McCarthy moment when he goes 8 days after Trump leaves the White House to Mar-a-Lago. But more importantly, perhaps, was Rona McDaniel, because Trump threatened to leave the Republican Party. I mean, he straight on said he was going to leave. He was going to start his own party. He did this on January 20th of 2021. And she freaked out and at first pleaded with him not to do it, talked about the damage that would do to all the people that had supported him, that everybody will lose as a result of that. He didn't care. And then the RNC basically threatened him. We'll stop paying your legal fees. We'll make your database useless. You won't be able to raise money anymore. And the calculation that both Rona McDaniel and Kevin McCarthy made was that if Trump leaves, he takes all those voters with him, and Republicans will lose for a generation.
But Republicans have been losing now for about a quarter of a generation.
Republicans have lost, every election since 2016. They're losing or underperforming under Donald Trump. But they made a calculation that it would be worse. And the what if that is out there is, what if they had told him, go ahead, start your own party at the depths of his, disgrace after January 6th. Mm-hmm. I mean, now it's too late. He's built it all back.
And another scoop from Jonathan Karl's book. This is on ABC News. Trump was privately enthralled by baseless theory that he could be reinstated as president. Despite losing the 2020 election, Donald Trump came to believe a fringe conspiracy theory that he could be reinstated long after leaving office before the next election. This is in the new book by Jonathan Karl. Trump has long publicly aired his grievance over the last election, frequently repeating false claims that it was stolen. But as Karl reports in his new book, Trump became fixated on a far-right theory that he could actually replace President Joe Biden. In June of 2021, the former president put out an otherwise typical statement that included the phrase 2024 or before. In a phone call the next month, Karl pressed Trump on what he meant by that. Quote, "You don't really think there's a way you would get reinstated before the next election?" Karl asked. And Trump's response was, "I'm not going to explain it to you, Jonathan, because you wouldn't. You wouldn't either understand it or write it," Trump said, according to the audio recording right there. This is an interview right here now from Rona McDaniel from this weekend, where she is asked about to condemn Donald Trump's vile statements, or she's asked what she thinks when Donald Trump talks about exterminating vermin and refers to vermin as people who don't share his political beliefs, echoing words that were used by Adolf Hitler and Mussolini and other authoritarians. And we talked about on the MeidasTouch network that if you go and just look at it, we have a graphic, I'll put it up right now, of Hitler statements and Trump statements. They parrot each other, and Trump's parroting Hitler. And we also know from an interview that his first wife, Ivana, has back in 1990, that Donald Trump would frequently read passages about Hitler, and that's what one of the things that Trump's first wife, Ivana, wrote. Here's a video right here of Rona McDaniel. Play the clip.
He says, quote, "In honor of our great veterans on Veterans Day, we pledge to you that we will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country, lie, steal, and cheat on elections, and will do anything possible, whether legally or illegally, to destroy America." Are you comfortable with this language coming from the GOP frontrunner?
Again, I am not going to comment on candidates and their campaign messaging. I will say this. I know President Trump supports the veterans. Our whole party supports our veterans. And I do think we're at a very serious moment in our country.
And asked again, here is what Rona McDaniel's second response is. Play the clip.
Former President Trump, who is the far and away frontrunner, said in what was supposed to be a Veterans Day message, quote, "In honor of our great veterans on Veterans Day, we pledge to you that we will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country." And then he went on. I mean, vermin in a Veterans Day message?
I'm not going to talk about candidates that are in a contested primary. You can talk to him about what he's saying. You can talk to him about what he's saying. I haven't seen the whole speech, but what I will say is,
it was a post on social media.
Obviously we support our veterans, and we're in a primary right now, and the RNC is doing our best to make sure we're getting our candidates visibility.
And at the same time that's happening, even more breaking news here about a former Fox News Capitol Hill producer who's suing the network, claiming that he was retaliated against as part of a purge of employees who wouldn't regurgitate what Donald Trump was saying after the 2020 election. This was someone who was trapped in the Capitol during the insurrection and filed a retaliation lawsuit against Fox. And then, of course, you could go back and look at our hot take that we did on of the statements by Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell as well, talking about Donald Trump's knowledge. Here, I'll just play for you the one of Jenna Ellis. This is the proffer session in the Fulton County District Attorney criminal RICO case. Here, play the clip.
Okay. And at the time period where they were going to start to discuss, what was Dan Scavino's role?
At the time, I believe his title was social media director for the White House. It became deputy chief of staff at the time that the conversation in question took place.
Okay, and when was that?
The conversation was around December 19th of 2020 at the White House Christmas party. And I emphasized him. I thought that the claims and the ability to challenge the election results was essentially over, because he said to me in a kind of excited tone, well, we don't care and we're not going to leave. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, the boss, meaning President Trump, and everyone understood the boss, that's what we all called him. He said the boss is not going to leave under any circumstances. We are just going to stay in power. And I said to him, well, it doesn't quite work that way, you realize. And he said, we don't care.
Yeah, that was Jenna Ellis saying that Dan Scavino told her they weren't leaving the White House no matter what. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 2 million subscribers here at the MeidasTouch Network. If you want to support the work we do here, go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, it's free. And subscribe to the MeidasTouch podcast as well. That's free. Have a great day.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.